welcome to the Utah Puck Report. It's me, your friend Jay Stevens, your host of Just Hockey Journeys, and we'd like to thank our sponsors, Larry H. Miller, Toyota in Murray, where you're not just you're not a customer, you're part of the family. When you're part of the family, it's easy to get service, it's easy to find a new vehicle. They've got awesome Forerunners and Tacomas, whatever you're looking for. You can find them on LarryHMillerToyota.com or just go down. They're in Murray. Easy to find, right in the middle of the valley. Our host, our guest today, Mike Folta. Mike, it's I got to listen to you quite a bit this year, and the voice of the Utah Mammoth now. And how hard is that going to be for you to say after probably nobody said Utah Hockey Club this year more than you?
You're absolutely right, Jay. First of all, thanks for having me on. Love the show. And you're right. You're right. Nobody said Utah Hockey Club more than I do. And no one is more thankful to have a name than I am, because they told us internally, like, hey, this team is for the whole state of Utah. Like, don't call them the hockey club. Just refer to us as Utah. And so every single game, here comes Utah up over the line, Utah breaking out of the zone. I could never say, like, here comes the hockey club 3 wide across the line. It was always Utah. And so now to have another identifier on the radio broadcast to use to tell people that the good guys have the puck, that I'm very, very thankful for that. So, yes, I said it a bunch, but I'm going to be saying Mammoth a whole bunch this year.
All right, before we get too much into the Mammoth, I want to get the chance for the fans to really get to know you. And, the first time I met you, you're super outgoing and personable. And I imagine you got to meet some fans this year and you got to have some interaction. But I'd like for the rest of us to really get to know you, because you're like, I've said it with Adrian a bunch of times, like, you have to pay your dues to make it to the NHL. So tell us a little bit about where you're from and what your path was to the NHL.
Yeah, so I'm from Central Indiana, right outside of Indianapolis, and there's not a ton of hockey out there. They have an ECHL team, the Indy Fuel, but hockey's not super big. Basketball is the big deal in Indiana, and I remember I always enjoyed hockey. I just didn't have an easy entry to it, I guess. I asked my mom to play once when I was 10, and she pretended not to hear me, and that was kind of the end of my hockey career. But we grew up like playing hockey on the street, and we would do it when it snowed, and somebody's dad would, usually my dad, would come out, take the car and pack down the snow and just drive over the street so we can move the ball on it and stuff. So that was the extent of my hockey playing. Would play in the driveway with the cousins and things like that, but didn't skate a ton growing up. Certainly didn't ski at all growing up in Indiana. We actually had grandparents that lived out in Ogden, funny enough, and
Oh, wow.
we would ski a little bit when we visited them, but other than that, you're not doing it in the Midwest too much. So I started to enjoy broadcasting in high school. It was just a fun way to stay connected when I wasn't playing baseball or football. I would broadcast the basketball games, and a really good buddy of mine, Sam Niederman, he's now the voice of the North Dakota State Bison. Him
Oh,
and
wow.
I kind of started this like broadcast entity in high school, and he put a lot more equity into it than I did. But it was a ton of fun to be able to call games. And in college, I thought, you know what, like I'll keep doing this on the side. I'll keep doing this broadcasting stuff, just for the fun of it. And then eventually in college, I really felt like it became a calling, and I got to do a lot of it in school, not because I was good, but because no one else where I went to school really had an interest in broadcasting. And after graduating, it was right during COVID in 2020. So there weren't a lot of broadcasting jobs. There weren't a lot of jobs in general. And I ended up working in an Amazon warehouse, Jay. I don't know if you've put your time in on the warehouse floor, but it was like 12 hours a day of just putting stuff on a conveyor belt, basically.
Oh,
And I learned how
man.
to drive a forklift and all that stuff. And you really learn the value of a cold beer at the end of the day when you're working long shifts in a warehouse. But I saved up some money. I took an unpaid internship in the ECHL with the Florida Everblades in Fort Myers, and I got to call the road games remotely. Jay, we have a pretty good
Oh,
feed going here on the Zoom quality, But imagine like calling ECHL games remotely and think of that kind of quality you're calling the game off of on the video screen. You can't really tell who has the puck. So I'm kind of making it up as I go, and so thankful for that opportunity because from there I got a full-time job in Atlanta, another ECHL team. Made the jump to Rockford, a little outside of Chicago, Illinois, in the AHL with the Blackhawks affiliate, and then was very, very fortunate to land this job with Utah. And so that's kind of the short version of it, I guess. I know it took it forever to tell, but that's the shortest I can make it. And very thankful to be where I am now because it's been so transformative this last year.
What school did you go to?
I'm a Purdue Boilermaker
All right.
out
Okay.
in we call it the Harvard of the Wabash Valley out in Indiana. It's an engineering school, so
Yeah.
like there's 40,000 kids there, but it's not like Syracuse or Arizona State or even Utah where there's a bunch of kids who are interested in journalism and TV production and things like that. Everybody's an engineer. I was an engineer, Jay. That's what I got my degree in, and I did the broadcasting on the side. And so I got to call everything from like auto racing to like Purdue men's basketball games, like some of their smaller ones, which was really cool. I got started calling hockey formally for the ACHA Division III club team.
Nice.
And the first game that the Purdue club team played that I broadcasted, they played a regional school, Purdue Northwest, and I think they had like 9 players. Okay. The other team had 9 players, and we won like 22-1 or
Oh,
something.
geez.
And so
Yeah.
I'm like, man, what did I get myself into? But that's how I got my reps, and we had a ton of fun.
You talk about that time, it was COVID driven, but can you imagine? Because I know a lot of ECHL teams discovered at that point, like, hey, we could save some money, some hotel money here and there.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure the Grizzlies have done that quite a bit where they're like, we're not going to send our guy, which is terrible. He's an amazing play-by-play guy, but how are you supposed to do it? Well, like you said, you can't even see the puck, but it's
Yeah.
just, go ahead.
Well, the broadcasting was brutal, and it was funny because you can't always see the puck, and then like a lot of times we were at the mercy of whatever was on the video board. Like that was the feed we were getting. So I remember there was a time when we're playing Florida's playing the Orlando Solar Bears,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Orlando has this advertisement up on the screen for like a trip to Disney, and then there's a hard jump cut to our one of our goons punching their goalie in the face. Like you have no idea what's going on when you're doing these things remotely. And I was keenly aware of that cost saving factor that you mentioned, Jay, when I got my first full-time job in Atlanta. And I made sure that, well, I made sure, and I was told to do this, that I was helping the equipment guys and the training guys on every bus trip. So that
Oh,
means
yeah.
when it's 3 in the morning and we're pulling into Savannah, that I'm in there with those guys hanging up sweaty jock straps and stuff like that. And if I can even save those guys an hour when we're unpacking bags and things like that, that goes a really long way for them. Because as I'm sure you know, like those guys are the lifeblood of the sport. And when we're on the road, they don't get a lot of sleep, and their hours are all kinds of crazy. And so, I really tried to help out in a lot of ways besides just calling the game. And I think everybody in the minors is asked to do a lot more than just one specific narrow focus. So I made sure to help out and provide value in other ways besides just saying he shoots, he scores.
Yeah, that's one of those things, man. In the minors, you got to wear all the hats and do everything you can. And I'm sure that helps. Like when they're like, "Hey, we're gonna maybe not send this guy on the road," and the equipment staff's like, "No, we need him. He's
Yeah.
helping us too. He's not just broadcasting." And I've seen that a lot. I mean, I've been around notoriously been around the West Coast and the East Coast League for 27 years now, and I'm friends with most of the equipment guys, and you see their workload. Man, it's like you get there in the morning, they're there. You leave, they're there fixing everything you broke during practice. You go take your nap, you grab a meal, you come back, they're there. All your gear's fixed and dry and ready to go. And then you play your game and they're, scrambling, making sure every piece of equipment's fixed. And then you leave and they're still there fixing stuff again. So I don't even know do they just live there? Like I've never
Oh
never
yeah.
seen one leave the rink.
Yeah, when I worked in Rockford, a lot of our guys, because some of them maybe live 45 minutes, an hour away. If we came in one night and we're playing the next day, yeah, they would just sleep on the training table and catch some Z's and get up the next morning and get right back at it. But those guys love the game. Like you have to love it to do that, and you definitely want to make those guys' lives as easy as possible because nobody works harder than those guys.
Yeah.
And it was interesting for me, like, because I didn't play growing up, right? So I got to learn a lot about gear and equipment and little nuanced things that I otherwise wouldn't have learned from just playing, Wednesday drop-ins at Steiner, right?
Yeah, it does give you a whole new insight, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that is maybe unique to hockey is how involved the broadcasters are and that they're around. I know that, in the NBA they come down for the morning practice normally, but they're not there every day. I think with the NHL, and especially coming from the minors and seeing every little piece of it and realizing that when you get to the show, like how special it is and how much sacrifice every person, including the broadcast team, is put into to make it to that level. It's funny when I was doing some research on you, and I looked up, and it credits you for your increase in, like when you're with Rockford. It
Yeah.
says you had a 57% increase in broadcast viewership and listening. Did you know that? Are you
I
responsible? Is
I
that you?
I did know that because I probably wrote that, but
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
it was probably 5.7%, and I just
Just move
fudged the
the decimal.
numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, I mean, look, when you're talking viewership for the AHL, right? Like when I was in Rockford, we would get um, a little over 200 people watching every game on like the streaming service. And then there was an audio link that you could click on, and those numbers would really fluctuate. And so I don't think like that 57% increase. It sounds nice, but in all honesty, like the team was better, ticket sales were up that year. We had more media coverage, and there were a lot of interesting players that we had. And so there's a lot of influences and factors on a number such as, AHL broadcast listenership or viewership. Believe me, they were not just tuning in for me. And we had a color analyst that year as well, a guy from the ECHL who won a bunch of championships. Actually, it's one of the winningest coaches in pro hockey history, Craig Martinson, who
Oh, wow.
um, was a tough guy back in the day and was to be feared as a player and to be feared as a coach. There were some times when I say Craig, it's Steve Martinson,
It's Steve. Yeah.
um,
I know who you're talking
with
about.
Allen, and there would be some times where he would be demonstrating like how to fight on me in the booth. And so you can hear my face like hitting the microphone as he's like jerking me around, right? But it was a
Man, you
ton of
really
fun
did
to
have to pay your dues.
yeah, no kidding. I felt like I was on the ice like that. That's why I'm a broadcaster, so I'm safe up here in the press box and nobody can hit me. But here I am just getting pounded nonetheless.
What do you think? So just going from step to step, you go from the coast to the A. What were your biggest noticeable differences being an AHL broadcaster? And can you remember like one or two of your favorite moments from being in the A?
Yeah, I mean, my first game in the AHL, I was hired mid-season. And so I came in January to Rockford. I didn't know anybody in Rockford. And my first game there was over like 4-3 overtime winner. The star player scores, first round pick gets the goal. And that was like, I was like, wow, this is off to a great start. This is fantastic. Um, so I love that. I had so many great memories in the ECHL though too. We had a player named Derek Nesbitt who played in Atlanta for a long time, had a really great pro career, ended up playing over 1,000 minor league games. Never made it to the NHL, but played 1,000
Wow.
minor league games. And we honored his 1,000th game in Atlanta, and we got the Barstool Spittin' Chicklets crew to come down and kind of hype up that celebration. And so um, we had guys like Paul Bissonnette and Mike Grinnell that were there firing up the crowd and getting into all their shenanigans. And we had a great crowd that night. And then Paul Bissonnette comes up to the press box, and this broadcast is going out on like our flagship station in Atlanta, the same station that carries the Atlanta Braves. So like people are hearing this right somewhere, and if something goes wrong, I'm going to hear about it. But I made the decision earlier in the day, like I'm not going to let anybody inebriated on the broadcast.
Oh.
Like that's not going to happen. And what do you know? Paul Bissonnette comes up holding a Miller Lite in his hands. Like he had been out in the crowd interacting with fans the whole day. You're not supposed to have, beers in the press box, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
he comes up and he's got his whole video posse with him. They're doing all this content. And he was as nice as can be. And when he put that headset on, he was just like in total control of his faculties and was absolutely dialed. It was so impressive, and he was so much fun. And Nesbitt, the guy we were honoring, he scored while Bissonnette and I were on the air, and it was just a really cool celebration. So that's a special memory from the coast. But the big, I know I'm being long-winded here, but I think the biggest difference is the team I worked for in Rockford was owned by the Chicago Blackhawks. So even though it wasn't an NHL team, we had NHL resources, and any money that could be spent to improve performance or to be invested in an idea that would enhance ticket sales or corporate sponsorship, we had the resources to do that. And that was so different than Atlanta when in the ECHL, our office was like 10 people, half of whom are recent graduates. And we're kind of just like duct taping everything together as we go. And we breathe a sigh of relief after every night just to get a show off, compared to Rockford, where there was so much more infrastructure and a higher level of performance and understanding. And so the difference in resources is not even comparable to the ECHL and where I was in the AHL. That's not the case all across the board, but it was for me.
Yeah, and then Rockford's always been such a great organization since they came on. There have been some other Utah ties with Rockford. You and I talked about Jason Christie, who coached with the
Yeah.
Grizzlies for a long time, and then ended up in Rockford, and then actually made it to the NHL. And I've kind of lost track of him since then. We also had Dylan Olson, was a Utah-born player who
Okay.
took his Canadian residency because his dad was a former NHLer too, a former Salt Lake Golden Eagle, Darryl Olson. Anyway, he played for Rockford and up and down from Chicago, so that's kind of fun. And then we also have now, in fact, I don't think he played minors, so never mind. Because we had Jack Skilly, who's a
Oh yeah.
he's a Utah resident now, but I think he was like a 6th overall pick. So I was gonna look it up to see if he actually ever played in Rockford.
His jersey is hanging up at the Park City rink, and I took a picture of that and sent it back to Rockford because he was a beloved ice hog
Okay.
when he was there. But Rockford is a town of about 150,000 people. There used to be a lot of industry there. They were in the screw making business, and they would make rivets and things like that. But now a lot of that industry doesn't exist there anymore, but people are still really proud of that town. And I grew to love it. Like truly, it was a special place, and the organization was fantastic. And I was excited to get to Utah, but it was really sad to leave after only being there for a couple of years.
Yeah, that's got to be hard. Let's talk about the transition to Utah. Like when did that pop up on your radar? Were you watching all the drama in Arizona and then like, hey, maybe this will affect my life, or was it just out of the blue when there was an opening?
No, I wasn't following that stuff closely at all, besides just the clips I'd see on social media. And I had reached out to the director of broadcasting, Travis Henderson, because I kind of heard through the grapevine that that the group who owns the Jazz was going to own the hockey team as well. And so it would be Travis who runs the who runs the hockey broadcast. So I reached out to him, didn't hear anything. And I was interviewing for a different job and got along in that job, didn't end up getting it. So I was kind of downtrodden at the time, but I had gone through the exercise of interviewing, which was really beneficial because a couple days later, I got this email from, it wasn't even like a official team account. It was like a personal Gmail. And it was Craig Amazine who was running the search for us for Utah. And he emails me and we had a couple conversations, and you might get a kick out of this, but this is my second interview with Craig, and it's a phone interview. But I was driving from Rockford down back to Indy to see my brother play football. So I'm like, you know what? I'll just take this phone interview like at a gas station somewhere. I got my notes with me, like I'm prepared, but I have to drive today. So I stop at this gas station. I'm taking the call, and I thought it was going to be, maybe 20, 30 minutes or something. Craig and I end up talking for like an hour and a half, and it is 90 degrees outside, and I can't roll my windows down because
Oh,
because there's the sounds from the highway that are right there. So I am literally like, it looked like I went through a car wash, and my notes are like the paper is like a wet tissue because there's sweat like all the way through them. So I'm burning there for an hour and a half, but it was worth it because we had a great convo, and yeah, I ended up getting that job, and it was not on my radar at first, but it very quickly became evident that this was going to be a really special opportunity.
I heard you got the notice kind of late, or maybe it was Adrian.
Yeah.
But was it you that you came in? They're like, "Hey, we need you here Monday," basically.
Yeah, well, and that was part of my selling point too. I was like, hey, this is September, right? This is like I was at Chicago's rookie camp in St. Louis when I got the news, and I was in the hotel, and I couldn't believe it. Really, I was emotional about it, and but I still had to finish out that rookie camp with Chicago, so I didn't tell anybody for a couple of days. And then when we touched down at O'Hare in Chicago at the airport on the tarmac, I walk around to all the equipment trainers and athletic guys or athletic trainers that I've been embedded with for the last 2 years. And I was like, yeah, guys, by the way, this is it. I'm leaving. And so I made sure to tell Utah, hey, if you need me there tomorrow, I'll be there tonight. That was like my line. And I think they appreciated that because it was late in the process. It was mid-September. And I parachuted in, started doing preseason games, and that was that.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. It's a big like tribute to you, or not to pump your tire too much, but that was an extensive search, right? They exhausted it. They had tons and tons and tons of applicants, and so it's got to be a nice little pat on the back to be like, hey, I got this job, I earned this job. It wasn't because somebody else just moved and I'm here. You got the job over a lot of other applicants, so that's pretty cool to know, right?
Well, I've definitely had a few of those where the only reason I got the job is because someone got fired or somebody quit. Like it's so funny how many of those, like just those random circumstances get you to where you are. Like my first experience, like formal experience in broadcasting, was an internship after my freshman year, and it was summer collegiate baseball. So it's like glorified travel baseball for college kids, but it was in Madison, Wisconsin. Like if you've ever been to Madison in the
Oh yeah,
summertime, it is incredible. And it was the best team in the league. And the only reason I got it was because someone else quit. Right.
yeah,
And
nope.
in Rockford, the only reason I got that job was because someone else was let go. But I've been very fortunate along the way. And, the opportunity is not lost on me. That's for sure. And in Rockford, we had a saying that we want to make Rockford proud. And, I've tried to carry that here to Utah and make this community proud too.
Yeah, it seems like you came in, you fit right in. But you've been around some other teams now, and you come in and you see what SEG does.
Mhm.
And tell me about your first impression of that, especially like maybe if you've heard what Arizona's gone through, and now you get in and you see this setup, and you're like, okay, maybe the Delta Center's not perfect right now, maybe there's not a practice facility, but what's your impression of all of that as you come in?
This is what I tell people who ask about, the ownership and leadership and stuff like that, everyone, they're all true believers here, and I think that's pretty special to be for management, for everybody in the organization to truly believe what Ryan and Ashley Smith are truly believing in their vision and in their mission. And that belief is founded in, Ryan and Ashley Smith coming through before and finding a way to get the hockey team on the ice in the first place,
Oh,
but making it as special as they have. And so it's based on past successes, but also the hope of the future. Like you said, Delta Center, it's not the way it's going to be yet. It's not 100% yet, but there's this belief that whatever the mission is, whatever is said is going to be done, is going to get done. And that's pretty special. And I haven't really worked in a place where there's this degree of belief from the top down, and this degree of synergy in the mission and the values. And so that's really special. And living out the all in principle, that's kind of one of the pillars of the organization. That's been fun to see in everyone, from the people who have come over to Arizona to the people who are like me, who just got thrown into the fire like everybody, and tried to make it special for Salt Lake City and for the whole state too.
yeah, that's cool. That's one of the emphasis too, because I know a lot of people wanted to call it Salt Lake something or other, and SEG has always been like, no, it's Utah. We're a
Yeah.
Utah company. We believe in Utah. Um, Tell me about your like. Let's talk about some of the special moments of the season. What really stands
Oof.
out to you this year? And I know it's an inaugural season. We had some amazing times, but tell me like your top three special moments.
I mean, it's funny. I just started going back on Spotify. You can go back and listen to all the full game broadcasts, and so I've
Oh
started
wow.
to go back and listen to those. And I listened to opening night the other night or the other day, and um, that whole day was. I mean, I'm curious what it was like for you, who's been in the market for a long time, and to have the NHL finally come. Yeah, I want to hear your perspective on this too, because for me, it's my first NHL game, but it's everybody's first NHL game. It feels like. I mean, I remember being at morning skate, and they're literally like drilling TVs into the wall, and like getting things, like they're doing construction in the hallway on opening night, opening morning. And
Yeah.
so people were working all the way up till 0 hour, and um, it was special to see it so successful, when, even though I'd only been there for a few weeks, I knew that there had been just like this gargantuan effort to get this underway. So opening night was up there for sure. Um, Honestly, like, not to be biased towards the beginning of the season, but my second road game was Madison Square Garden, and to
Jeez.
beat the New York Rangers 6-5 in overtime on a Saturday night in New York City was a pretty incredible welcome to the NHL moment. And that made us 3-0 on the season. Everybody's flying high. We're scoring a ton of goals at that point. Like, that was just so much fun. So that's up there. And I mean, I'm assuming you're kind of asking just on the ice, maybe, or
Anything.
anything.
No, anything.
Oh man, yeah, putting together a Hall of Fame here. Like the playoff race, even though we didn't get in, was still a ton of fun. And gosh, maybe the Gunther buzzer beater
Yeah.
at home
Yeah.
at Phil. Like, it's hard not to put that up there in the pantheon of Utah moments. But that was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So
For me,
maybe those three. That's just kind of off the cuff.
yeah, and I know I put you on the spot there. That's what I'm a shock journalist, so that's what I do. But no, it's that overtime goal here for me was just unbelievable. Like that is one of my all-time favorite moments of any game I've ever gone to. But yeah, you go back to opening night, and as a guy, I this show is old. Like I've been doing this show for a long time, and people would bring it up And I would argue with them about why I thought the NHL could work here. And some of the arguments against were just ridiculous. Like, well, we don't have that. We don't even have college programs, or we can't support the Grizzlies, or we don't have that many good players here. And I'm like, it has none of that has anything to do with the NHL. It's not like you're going to the, just pulling up guys out of beer league. You're drafting the best players in the world from the same pool as all the other NHL teams. And that was the kind of the weird part, is that there was that education that had to go on to the audience. Not all the audience, most of the audience gets it right, but there are those outliers. But that first game, to have an original six team here and to have Connor Bedard here, who's, everybody's talking about this kid and what he's going to be and how he's the future of the NHL, and not to put any pressure on the kid, right? But
Yeah.
to have all that going on, and just looking back and then walking around the party outside, and I was kind of lost. Like, I didn't know exactly how to cover it or what to cover. I wanted to get the best feeling parts of it. But again, like I've told people, I didn't go to journalism school. I went to paramedic school. So I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm doing interview after interview, and it's blowing my mind how many people that I'd never met in the state of Utah that had a favorite NHL team, that had a story about growing up loving the Chicago Blackhawks or loving the Red Wings, or, even just fans that had only been fans since Vegas got a team. And they're like, oh, they were close, so we became fans, and we go to every game. But because I believed in Utah, and I told Ryan at the beginning that I believed in Utah, but Utah blew my mind that night. The way they showed up, the way they already had NHL love and experience. And then there was a whole new set too that were like, I don't know what the NHL is, but I'm going to get behind it. And so that was kind of interesting to me. I think that the game was amazing, but my favorite part was that just interacting with so many people that just loved the game that I had never met. I thought I knew all 9,000 hockey fans here, So that was my impression from game one, was just being overwhelmed by the response of Utah. And that's got to be different for you too, to come into this market. What was your reaction to the fans, and what have you thought about Utah fans?
I think you described it well, where there's like different kind of species of fans. Like there are the fans that, and a lot of them that I'm sure you hadn't even met, where they're diehard NHL fans, or they have an NHL connection. But there's a whole different genre of fans, and to me, this is like even the more exciting part of this conversation, is like the people who are just showing up because something's going on. Like they're showing up because there's excitement, and sure, they're sports fans. Maybe they're not hockey fans yet, or they don't understand the game a ton, but they're showing up because everybody else is showing up. And I think, being able to convert those casual fans, those people who are just coming to an event, and converting them to like actual hockey fans by connecting them to the players and to the players' stories. That's part of our job on the broadcast, right? Is to tell these guys stories and say, hey, Lawson Krause, he's got this little dog named Butter Pig that has a Instagram account. Like, he's just like you. Or something of that nature, like Michael Kesselring, or, Dylan Gunther and Jack McBain. They bought a hot tub from Costco and it broke, and now they have to buy another one. And, like telling the stories of the players, to me, that's one of the ways in which me specifically, I am charged to connect those casual fans to the team, and convert them from just kind of passers-by, people who are coming to an event, to people who are coming to Utah Mammoth events.
Yeah, and those stories were fun, and I think that that's another one of those things that you notice somebody with talent standing out, and that's that Belle Frazier from the Tribune. She had a way of finding those stories, because I was there and I heard those stories. I was standing right next to her when those stories are being told, and then I walk away and she writes it up, and I'm like, I never even thought about talking about that, so it's fun to watch other people like that come in, like, and she's a Boston kid, but she came in and she really took hold of this team and got to help the rest of us get to know the team a little bit better too.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun.
Well, Belle does a fantastic job. She is, she's very young in her career, but she is going to have an outstanding career as a journalist. But it is funny hearing from her and some of the other writers, is that those are the articles that get the most traction, instead of the actual, game recaps, or the hockey, articles where they're talking about the power play or the penalty kill. The articles that get the most traction are the ones talking about the players' dogs or the logo or something
Yeah,
of that
Sergachev's
nature.
eggs.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, but that's what, like, sports are fun. Sports are supposed to be fun, and part of that fun is connecting to the players off the ice, right? And
Yeah.
I think our content team has done a really good job of that. Our broadcast team has really tried to lean into that as well. And um, now that we all know these players for a year, it'll be even more fun in year two.
Yeah, I thought that was really fun. The team gave me pretty much unlimited access preseason, even during I know with the collective bargaining agreement that most of the times the press doesn't get a hold of players, but I got everybody. Like before the game, before the season, the only guy I haven't had on my show from the team is Veggie, which doesn't make any sense to me as a goalie because I'll have like some long, deep conversations with goalies, but maybe those are the most boring for the audience. I don't know.
Well, he would be a great guy to interview because he's an interesting character, right? Like, he loves dinosaurs. That was one of the first things he did
Yeah.
when he got to Utah, was go see the I don't know if it was a dinosaur park or dinosaur skeletons or what have you. He's an outdoorsy guy, so I think he's really enjoying living in Utah. And of course, this last season was so transformative for him. He gets the new contract, looking ahead to the next couple years, and he's putting up career highs, and he becomes a true number one again, after he had not been a true number one last year and the year previous in Arizona. You're asking me favorite moments. I think Veggie's 49 or 50 save game against Carolina in November, that was one of the best nights of the year because the Hurricanes were just pelting us. I mean, it could have been like a 6 or 7-2 type game,
Yeah.
but Veggie kept us in it, and that was the best goaltending performance I've ever seen live.
Yeah, he was amazing, and I've had lots of I've talked to him a lot. We've talked about equipment a lot. We go to the same barber up here in Draper,
Oh,
Hollywood Cuts, and they have his jersey on the wall. He signed it, and I'm like, hey, I'll bring my Grizzlies jersey in. It's got 11 minutes on it. You want to put it on the wall too? They're like, no, 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 it's okay. We'll just go with the one jersey. But anyway, that night was amazing, and it was fun to see him. And the few games that I had seen of Arizona the year before, he was a standout to me, because I watched him play the Kings and I watched him play the Knights because I never intentionally watched an Arizona game because I had my favorite teams that I would watch, but I was watching this. I had no idea who he was or where he was from or how to pronounce his name, but I'd watch a few of his games and I remember even telling my son, I'm like, this kid's gonna beat us. I think it was the Kings game. I'm like, this kid's gonna beat us. This goalie that I've never heard of, but Arizona has a way or had a way. Now Utah hopefully has a way of finding these goaltenders. Aiden Hill, Ingram, Veggie. They just seem to find a way of finding these goalies and getting them signed for easy money at first to get them broken in. And then they become league elite goaltenders, and that's what we have now with Veggie.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what becomes of this. I believe I don't know how you say his last name, Rabel or
Rabel,
Michael
yeah,
Rabel. Yeah, who's
he's unreal.
yeah, he's in the college ranks right now. Sounds like he's going to stay there another year at least. And goalies take a longer time to develop, but he's the next one of the pipeline. And he had a really good year a really good couple of years these last few. So another one to be excited about, for the Mountain Blue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've said on this show more than once and in articles more than once because people talk about this, this, and this. And I'm like, if you time out the development of our team, if you kind of put it on a timeline and look at where our guys are going to peak in the next 3 years or something, that Hobble is a huge part of the future of this team. I think goalies are such a hit or miss thing. I've been big on other goalies before that have just faded away in the minors for some reason, but man, that kid is unreal. Um, I want to talk a little bit about the future, and I don't know. Like with Adrian, I'm like, all right, let's just speculate, and that's all I'm asking you to do. I don't want any inside information. I don't want you to get in any trouble, and I don't know what you actually know. From my experience, it seems like the scouts and the GM keep everything pretty tight to the vest on who they're going to look at and what moves they're
Yeah,
going to make.
I don't have any insight for you that isn't publicly available. I've been working with Tyson Nash. We've been doing this Nashcast podcast and having a lot of fun with that. And we've been having Bill Armstrong on, and he's keeping it pretty tight to the vest, and so there's nothing I can say on here that will get me in trouble. I don't think, because I don't know anything that will get me in trouble. But
Okay.
so fire away. Let's see. Let's do our worst here.
All right. All right. Here we go. Here's all the drama right now, right? I gotta pull up my notes. You've seen you've seen all the drama. We get moved up to the fourth pick. I'm gonna see what they're saying right now as far as mock drafts, because the mock drafts have, these are the so-called experts. They have Utah doing all kinds of weird things, who they're gonna pick. My sure bet was Porter Martone if they went for the fourth overall pick.
Mm.
And I've done a lot of digging around, um, but they love this Brady Martin kid. To me, I feel like that's more of a smokescreen or a move we make if we trade the fourth overall pick for a player and a 10th or 11th or 12th pick. Could be wrong, but what do you think we're going to do with that fourth pick?
Yeah, I mean, so again, we've got a chance to talk to Bill on Nashcast the last couple weeks, and like it was reported that Utah invited Brady Martin to dinner. Right? Well,
Yeah, big table, right?
Utah also invited a bunch of other kids to dinner, and so they're all like there together, right? And so the team gets to see how the prospects like interact with each other, how they interact at dinner. You see guys' personalities come out a little bit more. Um, but like inviting someone to dinner is like that happens to a bunch of guys. And it was funny to have you ever seen The Hunt for Red October, that
Oh
movie?
yeah. Oh yeah.
So in that movie, they talk about a crazy Ivan who will make a sudden move, basically unexpectedly, and it seems crazy, but in reality, it puts someone else in a tough position. And Bill Armstrong was talking about crazy Ivans in the draft.
Oh,
If you think back to 2022, that was a crazy Ivan draft. Everybody thought that Shane Wright was going to go number one, or if not number one, number two. If not number two, number three. Well, he ends up going four, and Seattle gets him. But Utah stood pat with Logan Cooley at third overall, and right now that looks like a pretty good decision. So right now their board is pretty much set. You would imagine they're just working through like different scenarios in case something crazy happens in the first three picks, basically. I feel like the draft opens up a lot with Chicago at three. Now it sounds like there's some interest that Chicago might want to move that pick. Like that's been reported, that's out there, but they haven't yet. So they're still on the board at three. I don't have any great insight as to who they're going to pick. I think if you're drafting that high, especially in the top maybe 6 to 10 picks in this draft, you're just taking the best player available. So it all comes down. You're not looking at need. It just comes down to who do you think has the best chance of being a contributing NHLer for the years down the road. So I like Martin. Like we've all seen that clip of him running over that guy in the corner
yeah.
and getting the puck, and he's got these answers talking about, oh yeah, I'm just farm strong and stuff like that. That's great, but I think there are so many centers that are going to be available in that window at number four. So you're likely going to draft a. I don't even want to say likely. You have the opportunity to draft a premium position, and it all comes down to who they evaluate the most. So they're prepping for all kinds of scenarios right now. I couldn't tell you with 1 inch of confidence whether it's going to be Martin or somebody else, but I'd be surprised if it's not a big center. That's where my intuition leads me.
Top ranked centers on the draft: Misa, who's supposed to go second overall, Hagens, but
Mm-hmm.
he's only 5'10". And then you've got Caleb how do they say
Denoye?
Denoye, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Big kid, 6'2", 180. He plays center. And people look at that all over the place, but there is the possibility of changing. And then you've got McQueen and O'Brien also play center that come in with
Yeah.
some size and some grit. But there are a lot of rumors and a lot of talk of Boston's in a rebuild, Pittsburgh's in a rebuild, and even Buffalo's in a rebuild. And everybody saw the Four Nations or that other tournament. or the World Championship, and they saw how well Tage Thompson fit in with our guys. But that's as much of a pipe dream as I think you can get. I know Buffalo's in a rebuild. I know they're willing to give up players. I don't think they're willing to give up their best player.
Yeah.
I do think Boston is willing to give up some good players, and there have been several people saying that Swayman could be dealt for the right number of picks and the right number of prospects. So, I mean, that's just a lot to think about going into the draft.
It is. I have a hard time seeing that. I mean, Boston's made some surprising moves recently. I have a hard time seeing Swayman coming over for Utah, especially when you just signed
Yep.
Vamelka to the deal. And the thing with Buffalo and Tage Thompson is if you trade away Tage Thompson, you're just going to be looking for another Tage Thompson, and good
Right.
luck.
Exactly. Everybody in
So,
the league wants a Tage Thompson.
right. And I think his name gets thrown out a lot simply because he's the best player on a bad team, and everybody would want that. I think, we've been hearing Tage Thompson comparisons. I don't know if it's exactly fair, but we've seen some people on social media compare this Daniil Boot,
Yeah.
who's coming in for Utah, to Tage Thompson, and he's getting that comparison because he's got he drives the middle of the ice, and he's 6'5", right? So that,
Yeah.
like he looks like him.
Well,
That's I
that
think.
comparison came from Bill Armstrong. Like even on my show, he compared him. That's where the
Well, there you
comparison
go.
came from me. So
I mean, if he's going to score 50 goals, then yeah, by all means. But
no pressure, kid.
I think what's encouraging about Boot and Dmitry Simashev is that they've been playing over in the KHL. They've been playing against men, and it sounds like physically they're pretty close. Like they're not going to have to add a ton of muscle or something to be impactful in the NHL. Like they've got developed bodies at this point. Now the decision making obviously is so much quicker in the NHL because the rink's smaller and things like that than over when you're playing overseas. But I think those two guys right there, I think they have a great chance to make huge impacts on this team. And I mean, those guys could be the equivalent of like free agent acquisitions because you weren't even necessarily forecasting them, or maybe we weren't, who were on the outside. We weren't necessarily thinking about those guys because they were playing on a different continent. But now that they come over, I think they could have a really big impact on the team this as rookies in this first year in North America. But it is fun to play the trade game, but you got to remember ahead of the draft, everybody lies, right? Everybody lies
Yeah,
ahead
it's
of the draft.
lying season. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's been kind of fun. And I look at the articles. I would say, and I started my article last week with saying I'm not a journalist, and I'm glad I'm not a journalist because those guys have to write every day, and they have to have something up every day. So at some point, you just got to start buying into anything. Just during the off season, there's not a lot else to write about, right? So if a rumor makes it to the internet, which I could start one right now, and I bet it got picked up by somebody, right?
What
And
rumor should we start, Jay? We
that's a
we
good.
could start
That's a
one.
good. We do this all the time in the fire department. We like to, get other people concerned about stuff. I'll tell you right now how you upset half the Utah audience is you say we're going to trade Veggie or trade Doan, and you'd have everybody. You'd get 1,000 clicks and 999 hate letters.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, those guys have to write every day, and they write stuff, and it makes the news. And I saw one this morning, and I even said, "How does this crap get posted?" Because it's not grounded in reality in any way. But there were a lot of people saying that Marchand wasn't going to be going to Florida either, and we all saw that crazy trade go through, and it definitely paid off for Marchand, who was, pretty upset when it happened. But 2020 vision, looking
Yeah.
back, it worked out for the best for him. Maybe something crazy happens for us. I don't believe something crazy happens for us. Bill is very calculated and calm, so
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
saw I saw a tweet last night after the we're recording this here on Wednesday, but I saw a tweet after the Panthers won the Stanley Cup, and I haven't fact checked this, but I think it might be right. I don't know what the Florida payroll looks like, but nobody a team has not won the Stanley Cup with a player making over 10 million. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
I
Sounds
mean,
right.
it's
Well,
pretty
10 million.
remarkable. And everybody who wants to go out and I'm just going to use this guy as an example, but everybody who wants to go out and get a Mitch Marner or somebody similar, right, who wants to get that one sexy free agent, you got to keep that in mind that the teams that win the cup are seldom paying a guy that much money. I don't know what McKinnon was making when Colorado won, but
Yeah,
uh,
he was right there at about 10. I think he's at nine
okay,
something because when he signed his contract, that was like the maximum going out at the
yeah,
time. 10 million contracts are relatively new. Even when everybody like did it, I guess they didn't do the math, but like when Zach Parise and Suter signed their 10-year $100 million deal, it was actually a 12-year $100 million deal. So it was like one of the most ridiculous contract signings ever, and it didn't work. But yeah, I think those $10 million contracts, which when you compare, you're saying your best athletes in the league are not making what like some pitchers are making, that don't even play every night.
yeah, yeah.
It's mind-boggling in the comparison. But
Yeah, it sure is, especially when those best athletes are getting, punched in the face every now and again, and the pitchers are dealing with a blister on the thumb or something like that and can't play. But that's a whole different show we could do,
well,
right?
I had pulled up the injury list. I was going to write a story on the injury list,
Yeah,
and you look at the injuries that Kachuk and all those guys played through. And the list of injuries, I mean, it's like almost every guy playing, but some guys have legit surgery needing injuries that in most sports you'd be like, all right, you're on the shelf until
yeah.
this is fixed. And these guys are like, nope, I'm playing through this torn pec that's separated from the bone. I'm playing through my grade 2 ACL tear.
Is
And,
that what's the abductor? What is it that Kachuk had that was torn off?
let me just double check on what his injury actually came in as. Yeah, it was an abductor. So that's any muscle that pulls your limb is an abductor.
Okay,
So I don't it doesn't say where his well, I thought his was chest. It just says abductor, huh? Oh, because you have
but
them
he
everywhere.
tore it off. He tore it off.
Even your fingers have abductors. So like they're everywhere.
I,
Um,
I'm being from Indiana, I've been rooting for the Indiana Pacers in these NBA finals, and Tyrese Halliburton missed some time. He's their star player with right calf soreness. I think, like, brother, I woke up with right calf soreness. Like,
yeah.
come, come on here, get
Yeah,
out there.
I'm 52. I wake up to everything sore now. I slept wrong. Um, McKinnon's making 12.6. But that's not what he was that's his 2 year ago contract, and that goes on
Right.
until 2030.
So
So
so you don't think the team is going to make that huge splash that people have been calling for?
I don't. I think I do think they're going to be aggressive, but I think they're going to be aggressive in a smarter way.
Yeah.
Also, everybody talks about Marner, and I've said it time and time again. Marner will take less money to prove to the world and to prove to himself that he is an NHL champ, like a Stanley Cup champion level center. So I think he takes less money to go somewhere like Colorado or Vegas. There were a lot of rumors about Vegas getting rid of Eichel and having some room for him. So we'll see what happens. It's we've got like 2 more weeks to speculate on everything, and
The rich get richer, huh?
yeah,
Jeez.
for like, but if you're in Marner's spot and you know the fans were not good to him in Toronto. And I think he got blamed for a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of speculation about what he said or what he did. And I've never found any factual information about him being a baby or any of that stuff. I've seen a lot of video of him being like, being a hard worker and being there with the rest of the Leafs, going through what they're going through. But he picks up a lot of blame. So don't you think a guy like that's going to come out and be like, I want to win. I want to prove that I can win. I don't need 10 million to do that. I'll take 8.
Well, if he goes to Vegas, that's a no state tax state right there as
Right,
well.
right.
So you could afford to take less theoretically. I have a theory on Mitch Marner though, Jay. I think I think if he had a beard, he would not take half of the criticism he takes. He's got like this kind of, almost like a baby face a little
Yeah.
bit. But if he if he had your mustache or if he had a beard or something and just looked a little burlier, right? Like just looked a little, I don't want to say tougher, but like a little more sandpapery, I think people would be like, you know what, he got 100 points, he's a good player, we can lay off him now. But
Yeah.
some of the clips of him on the back check are a little tough in the playoffs, and that's where a lot of that criticism comes in. But a beard would fix a lot of that.
I agree. Or a good mustache. I'm a fan of a good mustache. And I saw some of that last night though. There was the third goal was 100% on McDavid. I'm not picking up the back check correctly. He
Is that
went
the
to
one? But isn't that the one Skinner dropped?
no, no, no. Was that no, because I'm talking about the one. Maybe it was the second goal. It was. It was second goal into
Yeah.
the first period. Was that the one that Kachuk got? Yeah, he came in, cut to the middle, and it was on a counter offensive, and the D picked
McDavid
up.
kind of floated over to the wing a little bit, and
McDavid went right to the guy with the puck who was already
yeah,
covered by a D and left Kachuk open, who's his guy, center on. So you can make that video out of anybody. Nobody's blaming McDavid for the losses. But anyway, that's good speculation. I just kind of when it comes down to it, I think we pick fourth. I think we take a good player that deserves to be taken fourth. I'm not saying that Martin Kidd doesn't. Maybe we find a way to pick him up too. I just think that the scouts have been doing this all year. They've been watching these players for more than 1 year. They know where they're at. I have full faith in the Utah scouting system,
yeah.
and I think we go for the guy that they thought they were going to go. I know some guys increase their value during the combine, but that doesn't mean that translates into what happened all season and the season before that. So I think we pick fourth, and I think we take Porter Martone. That's my bet. What's yours?
I'm not even going to put a name on it. I couldn't even make an educated guess. Just I haven't watched much of those kids. I think I've seen the names pop up, right, but I couldn't tell you one from the other. I will say that, and again, this comes from just talking to Bill on Nashcast. Like his goal has always been to build an organization that is obsessed with scouting. That's what he called it, obsessed with scouting. Bill Armstrong was a coach. It was a successful coach. His first year as an assistant, they won the Calder Cup in Providence when he was working with Peter Laviolette. He left coaching to become a scout again. Like he loves the scouting part of it. This is like his Super Bowl. Like this stretch right here. This is like, this is all him. Um, but I think they've done that. Build an organization that's obsessed with scouting, and he even kind of made some mentions in our interview of guys coming up through the minor leagues as well. And I don't want to forget about those guys who are on the way. Maverick Lamru spent a lot of the
Oh
year
yeah,
in Tucson. I would expect him to be in Tucson again, which is totally fine. He's a young player, like
part of the
especially
process. Yeah, part of the
yeah, big
process.
and big defenseman too. Like it can take a little bit here. And so I would expect him to be down. Artem Duda is a name from Tucson. I'm sure Adrian could tell you more about him because he was really dialed into the Roadrunners throughout the year and watching a lot of their games. But Adrian would constantly say that he was their best player,
Yeah,
Duda, down there. And so he had himself a really good year. And is he a call up? Who knows? I think the back end for Utah is pretty exciting. And if this group can stay healthy, they were exciting last year. But you feel pretty good about the back end with Sergachev and Marino and Dursey and Cole coming back, and then you've got a good option in Nick DeSimone as a seventh guy, perhaps, or a sixth guy, depending on the situation. And Michael Kesselring, I think, is in line for a huge jump this year. I was impressed by him last year. I think he might have the most just raw physical ability on that back end with his size, his skating, his shot. It's about the decision making for him, and if he can piece that together, he could be more than a bottom pair defenseman. So I think there's a lot
Simashev.
to be excited on the back end. What were we saying?
I said Simashev on the back
Well,
end
yeah,
too.
and then you don't even throw in the sixth overall pick from a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's I think that area you feel pretty good about. Everybody knows that this team just wants to get bigger and stronger up front and add a goal scorer.
Yeah, and I think I've just been super impressed. And I know maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid too much because I I've never been as invested as in a team as I am with this team, knowing the roster top to bottom, all the way through the A, knowing who's drafted, still playing in the juniors. I still check in to see how the guys that were at the draft last year did in juniors, and it's been a lot of fun to see it. And when you sit down and look at it, like I'll pull up a bunch of different articles and a bunch of different film to write one of my stories, and I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, man, we're gonna be so good when these guys hit the maturity and you blend them in with our other guys that are now will have 4 and 5 years in the NHL behind them and all that experience. And then you
Yeah.
mix in the new guys that are already drafted, let alone the fourth pick this year. Like, we're going to be good. And our
I
AHL
think,
team's going to be good.
yeah, and that's important, right? Because you want those guys in the AHL to learn how to win. Like you look at Texas with Neil Graham, a guy who his name is being thrown around head coaching circles in the NHL. Texas with their AHL team, they have a bunch of young guys that have been developing down there. Logan Stankoven was down there in the AHL, and they were winning, and it was kind of teaching those guys how to be winners, right? I think the biggest thing and you know Armstrong is very cognizant of this. He's mentioned it. The biggest thing is just to avoid that contract that's going to hamstring you. Like
Yep.
avoid that bad contract and be so careful with handing out money. Now, when you've got guys, young guys, you want to extend, you can't pay those guys enough, right? The Gunthers, the Coolies of the world. But if you can avoid those contracts that really hamstring you, that gives you so much flexibility, and especially a team with Utah that has so many assets, draft picks, prospects, players, like really, really wealthy as a team in all three areas. You can really improve your team a lot faster than when you're hamstringed by the Parisi and a Suter contract, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Minnesota's still fighting it.
Yeah, they are. And I'll even take it back one step further. Speaking of Parisi, when New Jersey had their window, when they were, fighting for Stanley Cup championships, they extended Kovalchuk to the point where they wouldn't be able to sign Parisi again. And they figured maybe Parisi would take less money to stay there. The next year, Parisi was gone, took the big contract to Minnesota, and Kovalchuk quit. And you had to keep paying. He went to the K. And they're like, well, now our contract's done. Now we lost our two top scorers, and
Mm-hmm.
they haven't been the same since. They're barely getting back into it, right? So,
Well, and ask the Colorado Avalanche, ask the Carolina Hurricanes, ask the Dallas Stars. Like your luck can change just that quick in this league. And you were mentioning like the success horizon for this team, like the championship window 3 and 4 years out. Like you're right on the money in that, but that's a lifetime away,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
that is a lifetime away. 3 or 4 years, which I mean, you're right. That's when this team should be reaching its peak, at least for a lot of these players. But boy, so much can change in that time span.
absolutely. And you know what? I'm in for the ride. I'm enjoying all of it. I think it's exciting. I think it's more exciting to be invested in watching it all go instead of going to going and expecting a championship right now. I'd
Yeah.
hate to be a Jazz fan. I feel bad for those guys and everything they went through. Seems like the Mammoth are getting all the luck, and the Jazz are taking all the beatings right now. But I'd love to see them both just take off and be super successful. And
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
yeah,
We're stealing all the mojo though.
well,
We
maybe
got the
some of it
draft
will run
lottery,
off.
we got the players. Like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's it's been a tough stretch for them.
yeah. Well, maybe some of it will run off. SCG deserves to have two winners in their barn.
Yeah.
Um, it's going to be exciting to watch it. It's going to be exciting to listen to it and hear your call on the games and hear you drop wisdom. And I just want to thank you for being on the show, and you're entertaining and it's fun to listen to you, get us excited about this team.
Well, I don't know about wisdom, but appreciate everybody who has listened in and has stopped by and said hello at our booth. But right behind the Chick-fil-A, Section 7, that's where our broadcast setup is. So we love it when people come by and say hi And if you do that, then we'll shout you out on the air, and we have a ton of fun with it, and the fans have been great. So Jay, thank you for having me on, and we got a lunch date here in a little bit, right? I got to
Yeah.
save some room for this steak.
Tucanos, man, they just keep bringing it. I don't know if you've never been there. This is one of my favorite restaurants, so I can't wait to see you there in a few minutes.
I offered to take you to lunch, and you're like, "Yeah, let's hit the endless steak place."
Yeah.
Like, what did I sign up for here?
I'm a fireman. If it shows in the way I eat,
I love
meat,
it.
meat and salt.
Yeah,
All right.
we'll have plenty of that. We'll have plenty of that. No dinner
Sounds
necessary.
exactly. All right. I'll see you at Tucanos, and that is the Utah Puck Report.